Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Daily Ipswich, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. It is your Tuesday edition today. Normally be a Tactics Tuesday. With it being an FA Cup weekend, it's not we can't give it the same sort of coverage as we would a Premier League game, because the reality is most people who played on Saturday are probably not going to be in the team come this weekend at Villa Park. So we're mixing up today. We're going to do an FA Cup draw reaction. Draw has been made tonight at the time of recording, obviously yesterday by the time you're listening to this. This is so we've all seen the draw in the last 20 minutes or so. We'll sort of see how that sets us up and whether we can dare to dream of a further progression in the FA Cup. But joining me, Rob Binns, to go through all of that on today's episode. Firstly is Richard Popple. Me and you together again, mate?
Yeah, mate. Absolutely. Dream team back together.
Yeah, so can't get rid of us at the moment. Listeners must hate the sound of our voice.
I know.
We're combating that problem today, though, because you might be stuck with both of us two again. But we've got Tom here with us again for the first time in about 13 episodes, something like that. You've had a busy old time, haven't you, mate?
Give or take, Rob. Give or take. Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks in my life, from moving house, getting a new place of employment, and going on holiday to Norway. Not work, as I think you put it out on the pod, unfortunately. Preaching the gospel in Norway for the Daily Ipswich. I know we've got some fans over there. We appreciate everyone listening over there as well, as we do everywhere else. But yeah, went to Norway, tried my hand at skiing, as I said to you guys for the first time, and failed spectacularly, but you learn from your mistakes. I was away, obviously, for, I think it's fair to say, our bleakest result of the season, so I was kind of happy not on that. Falling very poorly, as I saw on the 100th episode reaction episode as well, which you just can't time it right, really, can you? Sometimes that was a proper shame there. But great result over the weekend whilst I was away, coming back. Good to see, again, like we said, it was championship opposition, as you guys said on Monday's episode. But, it's been some great memories at the Rico Arena in the past year or so, and it's good to get another on the board, and some players as well who very much needed a goal or two under their belt in Jack Clark and a few others. So it's a good performance all round, and cup run could be on the cards, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. So that 100th episode, we couldn't have timed that much worse, could we? That blew up quite badly in our face, John.
Not your fault.
To try and make it a big thing, didn't we? We had to push it back from its initial date because we missed an episode because no one was around to record earlier in the week. Pushed it back. Then when we lost to Southampton, the new date meant we went from having 4 of us to 2 of us. So we got you to record a voice note, and I think you said something. Your voice note said something like, "I'm sure the show's going well," and we just spent 10 minutes talking about how we got beat at home at the bottom of the league. That everything sort of blank in our face in that part. But maybe we'll get it right for 150 when that comes up, because that'll probably been about 3 weeks. Exactly. The speed we're flying through these episodes at the moment. But before we get on to how we move on in the cup, then lads. We'll dive in for a mini Tactics Tuesday on the old Coventry result, because like I say, it's going to be very tough to sort of look too much into it, as it was with Bristol Rovers, because the fact that, like I say, if you look at the team we had out, it's probably going to be Palmer and maybe Philogene, who we see from the start against Villa on Saturday. But Tom, I'll ask you, me and Rich spoke about him yesterday, that what are your sort of, it was Philogene's first opportunity from the start. Where do you stand on him from what you've seen so far? And is he in your team for Villa Park? Like me and Rich both said that we'd like to see him from the start in that game.
Yeah, it was definitely great to see him get his first goal for the club, wasn't it? I think he's, of all the players we brought in in January, it was very much a name we were really excited about. Maybe he should have come in last summer, but unfortunately couldn't get that one over the line with all the other transfers we had. Yeah, I think with him, it's the area of the pitch we've needed addressing a lot, really, since the start of the season. Positions throughout the season have emerged as ones we need to improve upon, like the goalkeeper, for example. But the right, really, I think from the first game of the season with Wes Burns out on the right, and then who got injured at Brentford? I'm so sorry, I've forgotten. I've been out the loop, guys. Yes, thank you. You
ain't been out the loop that long. That was like about 3 months ago.
Sorry. But yes, so that injuries and quality on the right side has really, it's been noticeable from very early on. And so I think to get a player of what is hopefully good quality and a good prospect is like what we should have in Jaden Philogene. So I really hope he can be that guy. I think, yeah, like you said, with the exception of Palmer, those two really are the two you think heading into Villa Park on Saturday that could potentially start against Soul Club, as you said, Richard, on Monday's show as well. I really think this is a great chance. And you'd like to think he should be proper up for it. I don't know if prove him wrong is the right sense, because obviously he must have a great relationship with the club. I haven't been there off and on for many years, but nonetheless, he should be up for it, and I really hope he can put his best foot forward on the weekend. But he's one of those players as well. We brought in January some real quality. I know, where we are in the league isn't maybe reflective of the players we have on the pitch, but you look at that on paper, like Delap, Philogene, and Cesar. That's some proper quality there, and it's a shame we are where we are. I just really hope these next 13, 14 games, however many we've got left, something special can happen, because I think on the pitch, especially going forward now, the goals haven't necessarily reflected it, but we have the quality now, I think, to really, I just hope it's not too late, but we have the quality now, I think, to really hopefully find the net a bit more often, and hopefully with Palmer coming in as well, on a bit of a sidetrack from him, we're going to have some more stability in goal as well, because I think that's really, really scuppered us throughout the season. But yeah, I think Philogene, it was great to see him get his first goal and really, really push on in the Town shirt.
Yeah, so it was a good round. It's a good squad performance, wasn't it? And I think that's the key, because like you said it right at the start, Tom, that we got some players who were in need of goals, got some goals, and it was the same after Bristol Rovers as well. But it's going to be really important that we get the rest of the squad firing, isn't it? Because me and Rich mentioned the striker situation yesterday, the fact that Hurst had run his race yesterday, and we had to put Delap on the bench and bring him on for 10 minutes, which was an unnecessary risk, apart from the fact that it kind of was necessary because we haven't got anyone else to play up front. And so Smodix has just got injured again straight after coming back. So it seemed like we were going to play down the route of keep Hurst and Delap, and then Ciso could do a shift if he needs to. Broadhead could do a shift if he needs to. Smodix could do a shift if he needs to. Well, one of those three is down already. And so if too many get injured, then we won't be able to drag them out the three behind. So it's really important that we got some of those squad players firing, weren't it, Rich? Good opportunity for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think just for them, really, I think also in a season where you're not winning many games, it doesn't really matter who's playing. Picking up a win is just really important. We've won 5 games all year, two in the cup and 3 in the league. So, that's not many wins, is it? So obviously any team and any footballer is going to feel better after winning a game. And I think for the whole squad, it was just a massive boost. And like we were saying on the other pod, to score 4 goals is obviously important as well. And yeah, I think, going back to the Philogene point, it would be nice to see him at the weekend. And Enciso will probably come back into the side as well. But I did watch Villa against Spurs, and they were pretty profligate in front of goal, but they looked pretty good, to be honest. So yeah, that game obviously we'll be previewing later in the week. But on their day, Villa are a kind of match for anyone, and they're a real handful. We obviously gave them a very good game at Portman Road earlier in the season, but it's going to be a tough ask to repeat that, I think.
Yeah, so it's going to be a tough one in that game, definitely. But it's nice to have a confidence boost, like you say. It's easy to forget how little games we won this season, and I think you said yesterday as well, didn't you? Was it the first time since March, did you say, that we'd scored 4 goals in a game? So
I think so, yeah. Yep.
A few rarities to enjoy there, definitely. But that will do for looking back. It's time to look forward. So we're going to have a quick break on one of our sponsors, and then we'll be diving into who we've got in the 5th round in our first appearance since 2007. This podcast is brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap-up broadcasted in 5 different languages. It's your one-stop shop for your daily football fix, and you can find all podcasts on the GSBN network on all your usual streaming platforms. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day. We are back for the second part of today's show. So it's the big talking point, lads, that's happened in between our last show and going into this one. The 5th round draw has been made. Obviously, we're in the hat for the first time in a long time. We don't get in the 5th round hat particularly often, especially in recent history. And we still don't actually know who we're playing yet, because we are playing the winner of Exeter and Nottingham Forest to play tonight. So we're still a bit in the blue. It's a fair assumption that it's going to be Nottingham Forest away, but obviously we don't know for sure yet. And like I was just saying before we came on, there's been one there's been one top 4 team who's lost in Devon unexpectedly in this round of the FA Cup already. So you never know that lightning might strike twice. But Tom, I'll ask you first. How do you feel about that draw? In sort of, the other teams who are in it. We haven't got 100% who we're playing yet, but where do you sit with this and our chances of progressing?
Well, it depends really. If Exeter can pull off a shock tonight, obviously again, a time recording, it's very unlikely. But in all likelihood, it is going to be a trip to the City Ground, and I think it was kind of a drab affair earlier in the season. I think that's really before Forest really started to find their feet and be one of the top sides this season. But it's going to be a difficult ask heading to the City Ground if it is who we are facing. But you never know. Cup football's a weird one. Like we've seen this weekend, as you said, with Plymouth. We're in the same league as Forest, so it wouldn't obviously be as big of a David Goliath sort of shock win if we were to get a victory there. But as you said on Monday show, we are now one of the underdogs heading into the tournament. And, it's an awkward... Sometimes the Cup can be an awkward time, and I think for both clubs, especially with us, with trying to survive in the league, obviously it's a welcome addition having a Cup run, but sometimes it can be a distracting one as well. Maybe that'll be the same for Forest as well, with City and Chelsea maybe breathing down their necks for third or fourth, wherever they are at the moment. Could be similar for them, and we may play them at the right time. The game's taking place when, again? It's
weekend
first
of
weekend
First
of
of
March,
March?
isn't it?
Yeah, first of March.
Yeah. At the moment, they're all 3 o'clocks because they haven't been designated for television games yet, so I want still to go through. But, it's the 5th round again. It's, as James said at the start of the season, it'd be nice to have a cup run. And it is, isn't it? The FA Cup's become slightly diluted in recent years, I think, unfortunately, with television, and it seems to be going even further that direction with it moving away from BBC and ITV even more forward next season by the looks of things. But for the time being, it still has that sort of history and that sort of vintage feel to it, doesn't it? With the sort of smaller teams playing the bigger ones, as we saw like Leyton Orient City and stuff like that. So I really hope we can do something. And then a trip to Wembley would be nice, wouldn't it? I know you said, Rob, we are one of the few sides yet to go there. And it's surprising, isn't it? You think that stadium's been around for coming on 20 years now almost. And when you said that, I was like, that can't be right. But yeah, it really is the case, isn't it? Most teams, even some like National League sides, have all gone there now. Like I'm from around just near the Cambridge area, and I remember when they went there once in 2008, maybe in a random playoff final or something. So even sides in that part of the country are managed to get there. So it's we're very much on our list we don't want to be on. And a day out at Wembley would be fantastic. Obviously, our last time there was a big. Obviously, it wasn't the new one, but at the time at Wembley was very much a big day for the club. So hopefully we can have another one again soon. But if we do come against Forest, I think it'll be a really difficult game, of course, but it's cup football. You only need to be good on your day rather than the whole season, don't you?
So what are you getting here for being mediocre for 20 years? We weren't bad enough to be in the St Johnstone's Paint Trophy or whatever the hell it is, and we weren't good enough to Papa John's, and we weren't good enough to sort of get there with the big boys. So yeah, we are due a trip for sure.
So we must be the biggest club to not be on there, because famously it was Newcastle, wasn't it? And then they've made, obviously they're going to go there for a cup final this year. They went there for a cup final a couple of years ago. That I think there's a few technicalities in there. There's a few teams that scrape and by on playing Spurs there in the Premier League, rather than actually being there for a semi-final or a final. I think which I don't think should count, but we need to get ourselves off the list
as well.
Later.
But what
I've got the list here if you want to hear it, guys.
Oh yeah. Hold on. What's the best definition of a big team? What's the definition of that? Like size of the ground or something?
Do you want me to go through who there is, and then you guys can make a decision from that?
Yeah, go on then. I'll see if I've made an idiot of myself.
Obviously, there's 6 clubs. There's 6 clubs, including us. So you obviously got Ipswich, and then I won't go in order of what I think is quality. I'll just name what it is here on the site. So you've got Accrington Stanley.
Yeah, we're bigger than them.
Colchester, who are our friends next door. Crawley Town.
Bigger.
Hartlepool United, and then this one I think may be contentious in terms of if we're bigger than them, and it's a team that has won the Premier League. That's Blackburn Rovers. They have not been to Wembley.
Are they not?
So it's either us or them, really, the 2 biggest sides who yet to go to New Wembley yet.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't expect that.
But they kind of went down when the New Wembley kind of came up, so to speak. I suppose so. Sort of heyday in the Prem, kind of. But then again, you think the odd playoff appearance or something like that would have seen them get there.
Being average for that. Or mediocre for a long period of time, like Rich said. I suppose Blackburn are in that category of us, really, aren't they? That's good. That was good.
Yeah, very much so.
Like you said, they dropped off right as Wembley was getting built again.
And their boss just left after handing in his notice, didn't he?
He did, yeah, he did. This is what we've been missing, though, Tom. Stats like that, facts, superb stuff.
Someone actually fact checking the stuff we come up with.
I know, it's good. It's good stuff.
Say it with confidence, it all sounds true, doesn't it?
It's good stuff until you realise that I make up half the stuff I say, and eventually I'll get away.
Don't give out the secrets,
I always try and quote stats without actually trying to read them beforehand. I just try and do them from memory from 3 days prior or something. But look, Rich, we're in an interesting position here, aren't we, with this draw? Because they're so far apart. It's literally going to be the lowest team left in it or the highest team left in it, depending on which way this result goes. So it's quite hard to look ahead, really, isn't it, until we know how the result of that game plays out tonight.
Well, it's also, it's a real representation of kind of like where Ipswich have, come, haven't we? And so quickly, because we were playing Exeter a couple of years ago, beating them obviously famously on the final day of the season, to get out of League One finally. And then all of a sudden we could have an all Premier League time against Notts Forest, who are flying and could finish in the Champions League this year. So it's a real kind of, it's an interesting sort of draw in that sense. But I actually think, I was talking to you about it, Rob. I think the away draw kind of suits us, to be perfectly honest. It would have been good in a way to get a home draw and maybe get that monkey off our back. And, I know we beat Chelsea, but we've been so poor at home. And that ultimately, if we do go down, is the thing that's going to cost us, really. So I think away from home is probably our best bet anyway. And I think Forest, clearly they're the better team. Clearly they're having a brilliant season and they're full of confidence. But I think their focus will be the Champions League and the league, I think, because they, like I was saying to you before we started recording, that I didn't realise they were 6 points clear of fifth or even sixth. So they do have a really good chance of getting it, because the teams fighting around there, Man City, you never rule them out, but they're showing a lot of inconsistency. Newcastle have just dropped a couple of games from nowhere. Villa can't play after Europe and are still in Europe. So I think they've got an amazing chance to get in the Champions League. And I think, is that going to be their focus rather than the FA Cup? Potentially, and that might give us a bit of an opportunity. That's also assuming, obviously, they get past Exeter. Hopefully they don't, and we have a trip down to Devon, which would be a fun day out. And obviously we would be very heavy favourites to go through if we got that tie.
Yeah, look, obviously we're very early doors, like I say. It's hard to say when you don't know who you're playing, but when we look at when the date's played, Nottingham Forest have got Arsenal at home in the midweek beforehand, and then Manchester City at home the following week. So if you put that run of 3 games together, and then they've got Newcastle away the Sunday before that as well. So if you put that run of 4 games, Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, Ipswich at home in the Cup, City at home, there's quite a clear outlier there in that game in terms of what one you'd have to, in terms of if you needed to rest players and rotate the squad, that could very well fall in our favour at that point, you could say. But then obviously you look at our run as well. We spoke about the importance of the games like Man United and Crystal Palace, which are either side of it for us, that they're the sort of games you've got to get something in. But it'll be interesting to see what sort of team gets put out. And again, I suppose that will all depend on who ends up going through. But it's a really tough question, like I say, until we see the result of that game. But I want a number from both of you just to wrap this section up. I'll go to you first, Tom. Between 1 and 10, how do you fancy our chances at first glance of a first quarter final since '93?
Oh, is it 93?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
I'd say I'll give it a 6. I think it might be a bit of just playing it safe there, but like I said, with a league fixture against Forest, I know we almost managed to get a draw there in the season, but I think with a league fixture against Forest at the moment, you are kind of just hoping and praying that you don't come out too battered, so to speak, heading there. But it's a cup game; you can't write it. I think it really does. It's kind of a toss of a coin, isn't it? Like, who can really come out on top? Like, form kind of goes out the window a bit, as I said, in a cup game, and certain players who may not get the chance do come into the squad. I know obviously Forest is much harder position, but I will imagine that squad may be a bit different to what we're used to seeing in terms of the standard 11 in the Premier League, even if it is a better opposition than we have seen in terms of Bristol Rovers and Coventry. So that may be good for us as well, having more hungry players on the pitch. You don't get the chance so often. So I'll say a 6 out of 10. You never know. Obviously, Forest are a big club, big history, and having a great season. So it's hard to look past them, isn't it? But quarter final would be fantastic. Really, really good. What's been quite a difficult season.
Yeah, Rich, what would your number be?
Do you know what? Since you brought up who Forest would actually have in the week before that game, should they get there, I actually put us higher than that. I'd go for maybe a 7, because Newcastle away and then Arsenal at home. That's two of the hardest fixtures you're going to have all season. So
they'll probably get 6 points now.
maybe, but if they get 6 points and have to burst a lung or whatever to get them, then that's all good for us, isn't it? I don't see Chris Wood at 33, despite him having the season of his life, playing those 3 games in a week and that kind of stuff, or even Morgan Gibbs-White or anyone like that. So there's an opportunity there for sure. I know we've got our own fixtures as well, but Newcastle and Arsenal is kind of as tough as it gets, I would say, to a certain extent. So yeah, I'll go for a 7. Why not? The last time we were in the 5th round, it was Watford, wasn't it, in 2007? Yeah. And that was a missed opportunity, really. It's that kind of draw, because I think Watford were a Premier League side at the time. They were in and out, weren't they, for like a decade? It's got that feeling to it. I mean, Forest are, a better side probably than that Watford team that day, but I just feel like they could take their eye off that a little bit. I don't think it will be a priority. So maybe we nick it. I'll go for a 7.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe we'll check the confidence levels again once we know who definitely goes through, because I wonder what the difference in you both got have gone on the assumption of Forest there, which is fair enough, but so you never know. It might be down to Devon. We'll have to see how that game plays out, but certainly there's a little bit of room for confidence. And look, Forest have had this run of games with those 3 teams before earlier in the season, and it was their worst run of the season. They said the reverse fixtures of each of them. They got beat 3-0 by Arsenal, 3-0 by City, and got done 3-1 at home by Newcastle. So they're fixtures that haven't served them very well the first time round this season. But we'll see. But I'm going to have a quick break now to hear from one of our sponsors. And then we'll react into the rest of the draw as a whole and sort of, dare we say, plotting routes to the final and sort of who we could see coming through. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. And we are back now for the final part of today's show. And before we get into the full draw, I can't believe I've just remembered something when looking at dates again that I can't believe I've missed while we're chatting about the game. Is that this week, the weekend this game is going to fall? I'm away. I'm away in Milan with some friends, one of whom is a Nottingham Forest fan. So that has got a very interesting setup if we can find somewhere in Italy showing the game, which I've just thought of. There's 3 of us going. My mate's a Town fan, one's a Forest fan, so it's going to be a very interesting weekend around everything else. I can't believe I've only just realised that.
You're going to have bigger, Rob. You're going to have Napoli v Inter. I know it's an away game, but that's a big game in Serie A. It'd be interesting to be in Milan for that game. Just atmosphere of a city-wise, complete distraction there, but that's kind of a cool game to watch.
What about Exeter? Are we dismissing them completely? Have we got any Exeter? Are you going with any Exeter fans?
No, I don't know any Exeter fans, unfortunately. I only know one Forest fan.
I know one.
I know one. My closest mates. Yeah, that'd be an interesting one. But so I said,
one of my in-laws went to the uni in Exeter, but that's about it for me.
So I text my mate when I saw the draw. He said then, now when I realised that, say that it'd be quite funny if you lose now, wouldn't it? As soon as I saw we got each other, I was going to be nervous there. So it'd be quite funny if you just lose to Exeter now, and it ruins it, because we've been eyeing up the cup draw against each other for years, and it finally happens when we're all out the country and can't go. Whatever happens, but oh well.
Look, it is not a foregone conclusion, because it's going to be freezing cold in Exeter tonight. Plymouth just did one over Liverpool. I could see it happening.
You never know, do you? But let's look at the rest of the draw then, because we spoke a lot about our game, but we also spoke yesterday about some of the teams that have gone out so far. And when you look at the draw, there's potential for, there's a guarantee some very good Premier League teams going to go out because they've been drawn against each other. But there's some big opportunities for people to drop out here. So we've got Aston Villa against Cardiff, Manchester United at home to Fulham, obviously us against Exeter or Forest, the winner of Doncaster Crystal Palace, which at time of recording we don't know yet. Obviously, you'll know that by the time you're listening to this episode. They welcome Millwall. Newcastle have got Brighton at St James's. As Bournemouth host Wolves. An all-championship tie between Preston and Burnley, which means they'll guarantee of a championship side being in the last 8. And then Plymouth's reward for beating Liverpool is a trip to the Etihad to take on Man City. So Plymouth going to City is a very interesting draw, but a fairly uninspiring draw with a lot of Premier League teams getting each other. But on that say, and for a neutral sort of setup, it looks quite a boring draw, doesn't it? But from a point of view of somebody who's still in there, you look at the teams that, again, who might be out if you pick a result up. Obviously, Forest would be out if we were to make the quarters, obviously, in that state. One of United and Fulham gone. One of Newcastle and Brighton gone. If I say Villa's not a... Cardiff will be well up for that at Villa. Bournemouth and Wolves, one of them will go. And so you never know. Bournemouth have been going strong. But again, it debates where the league season comes in. Similar argument if it is Forest that we end up playing. That so there's a lot of potential there for, like I say, to know going into it that one of Newcastle and Brighton and one of United and Fulham are nailed on to go. It certainly makes for an interesting look at the draw, don't it?
What's going on?
I don't know. You guys stopped moving. Are we still live? We're still live.
Sorry, Rich, before you go.
No, sorry.
Timing. It just froze right as my question. I asked the question and everyone froze. Did, yeah. We had no idea what was happening.
Sorry, yeah.
Rich, you take the answer first.
It is interesting in the sense of we're in it. I mean, we haven't been in it for so long, so actually just being in the last kind of... or the 5th round or whatever is just kind of exciting. But yeah, the draw itself, I agree with you. I suppose it is a little bit, there's not a standout game particularly. Also, there's not a jeopardy kind of tie because a big club isn't going to a smaller club or a bit of a banana skin. So, if Man City were going to Plymouth, that'd be a much more interesting tie than the other way around. I mean, I'm sure they'll have fun all piling up to Manchester for that game. But as we saw, I mean, they were lucky to get past Leyton Orient, really. I know they had lots of chances and stuff, but they were still a bit all over the place. And they could have been 2-0 down at half-time in that game kind of easily. So, yeah, yeah, they annoy me a little bit as well because they always seem to get a fairly easy ride in the Cup. They always get an easy draw. It's really, really irritating. Yeah. And Man United, Fulham have got a good record there recently. Man United are appalling at home, aren't they? So you never rule that out. Brighton Newcastle is a good one because I think it'd be interesting. This has got a whiff of the kind of Leicester City season about it. A random winner a little bit, and it'd be lovely to see because it gets very boring when the big clubs pick them up all the time. So yeah, I'd like to see Brighton put Newcastle out. That'd be quite nice. See them march on. Bournemouth, I think they deserve a really strong cup run as well because I think they've been probably my team of the season with the way that they've played and the fact that they've had so many injuries and just continue to play unbelievably effective football and really watchable football as well. So it'd be nice to see them have a cup run as well. And of course ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think, Tom? How's the draw shaped up in your eyes?
Yeah, well, living in Manchester for the past few years, one of the games that kind of stands out to me Lancashire-wise is Preston v Burnley. I know it's not an all-Premier League affair, but for people from that part of the country, it's a big, big game for them. So that's kind of the luck of a draw in that sense for both sides as well. Good chance to go to the quarters for one of those teams. That's one of the good things about this draw, I guess, isn't it? That one of those teams has managed to avoid a Premier League opposition. Obviously, from Plymouth's perspective, it's kind of nice to go against Premier League opposition. But sometimes you want to avoid them because you can advance further, and that's going to be the case for one of those two sides. That's a decent game to look at as well. Yeah, I'm echo your point there, Richard, about Bournemouth as well. I think for me as well, the second you said it, it kind of dawned on me as well. You're right. I think they have been my team of the season as well. Just the way Ariola's got them playing, and they do kind of float under the radar in terms of fandom sometimes, and just
because of what Forest have done, right? They kind of
yeah, very much so. Yeah, and it's like any other season, this would be like, you kind of expect Brighton to fill this role each season, but they've kind of flagged ever so slightly this year, and Bournemouth have kind of jumped on it, and they've been fantastic. Those two young centre-backs they've got are just like absolute Rolls-Royce players, and so impressed, and Kirk as left-back as well, so impressed when those three and many of their players when they're at Portman Road over the season and just look great. So yeah, I think being rewarded for a cup run for their season in the cup would be great for them. And there's a lot of teams, like you said, you got Villa, Newcastle, Brighton, Bournemouth. One of those sides or two of those sides are going to be in the quarters, and I think that's a good thing to see because it's a chance for them. I think especially for the likes of Brighton and Bournemouth, who have been ran really, really well in recent years. Villa included, obviously, from almost going down of Gerrard to now being in the Champions League knockout round. Those three sides really you'd like to think Silverware could be in the future given the trajectory of how they've been, and this is a great chance for them. So I think obviously they want to consolidate wherever they are in the league, and they've got other competitions as well, like Newcastle with the League Cup and Villa with the Champions League as well. But this is a good chance for them. City, we've had the Manchester Derby 2 years in a row now, and no one wants to see that for a third time, do they? So either they play each other or Fulham do a job, or Plymouth beat a Premier League side for the third round in a row. Would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Shame that's not down south, like you said, Richard, because I think that would be a massive difference maker. But they've beaten a Premier League side already away from home this season against Brentford, who had the best home record in the league, I think, at one point as well. So they'll try their best, won't they? But it's a shame, it's not the same as how Liverpool had it this past weekend. But yeah, not many standout rounds, but hopefully we can see ourselves through to the quarters.
Yeah, that's the thing in it, really, those that you always feel like there's a bit more higher chance of a cup set when the lower team's at home. And you say, you look at the two games there, obviously, Cardiff going to Villa, Plymouth going to City. We swap them the other way around.
I never heard cup set before.
I've never heard cup set before.
That's great.
I like it.
I'd love to take credit for that. It's fairly common. I thought it was a fairly common saying, but we can claim I'm better than the podcast. But yeah. But say if you flip those two games the other way around, they look a lot more interesting going into it. But look, obviously we could still have them because obviously if Exeter beat Forest, then us going there would set it up that way around. And so if Doncaster have beaten Palace, which like I say at the time of recording we don't know, the game's being played now. If Doncaster win that, then obviously them hosting Millwall there would certainly set it up as well. But we don't know how those fixtures play out. So it would have been nice to see Cardiff be at home or Plymouth be at home. But overall, so a fairly intriguing draw. So I feel like the people who are neutral in this now, if their team's gone out already, probably look at that and say it's a rubbish draw. But for one of the 16 teams still left in it, it certainly looks a very interesting end to the FA Cup. But there's only so far we can look ahead, though, obviously, because we've got a few big games in the Premier League to come up before then, and say we'll dive right back into the FA Cup in the build-up to that game against whoever wins out of Exeter and Forest much nearer the time. But the rest of the focus this week is going to be back on the Premier League. We go to Villa Park at the weekend, and we've got 3 more episodes this week where we can look ahead until we go to that trip. But that's the end for today. So from me, Richard and Tom, thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you later in the week.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.